I see 7 people in here. Can anybody hear me? 2 people. Where is... Hmm. Reactions. Where is sound? Hmm. All right. Can anybody hear me? There's 2 people here. Let's see if anybody responds. Oh, you know what I could do? Try this. It's my email. GM. Oh, weird. Hello? Hello? Oh, cool. Delayed. All right, cool. All right. Well, here we are to the live stream. I just wanted to do this to make it easier if people wanted to show up without showing their face. So um, I'll keep this over here. Um, so yeah, I'm just gonna get used to this. It'll take me a second or two. And then if you have any questions as I'm going along, you can just drop them in the chat over here on the right, and I should be able to see it as we go through and see how everything is working. All right, so first I want to just show you the coolest, newest thing, which would be over here. All right, so if I share screen and I pick, where is it? Nope, nope, there. That should, how does that look? All right, perfect. All right, cool. So this is story starters here. They're coming through there. All right, yeah, a little bit of a delay. That's weird. Okay, so, all right. So what I want to show you is the new stuff with Subtext Focus. So for the longest time, we couldn't do. I couldn't upload uh, files into Subtext Focus here. So the difference here is Subtext Flow is for rapid creativity, and that's like GPT 4.0, and it's really great at just like getting ideas down, and then also going through and um, making sure, that you just like are developing the story and it has some training behind it. And then when you really want to get into the narrative structure of things, then you'd want to flip over to focus. Well, and that's all the new reasoning models. And this is a manual thing. I'm pretty sure by summertime it'll be an adaptive thing where it just does it automatically. But for right now, in order to take advantage of it this very second, you just have to switch it around. So let me show you. Let me stop for a brief second. I'm just going to upload and I'm going to pick one that I haven't done yet. Screenplays. And these are just stuff that I had off the internet, years and years of analysis. I'm going to try and pick ones that I haven't done an actual analysis of because then that would be it'll pick up on the training that I've done on that. So let me go ahead and do this. Share this one. Is it this? Okay. And the only reason I flipped over just so couldn't see the stuff that's in there. Okay. So this is a script for a spec script that I believe was on the blacklist. I think there was a time when we were going through the top 30 or top 40 blacklist screenplays from like years and years and years ago. So you can kind of assume that they're probably pretty good. And so this one, 73 seconds, which is about the Challenger disaster. And I think the time leading up to it and the people that were trying to like get across, like, hey, maybe you should hold off on doing that. Um, and so all I did is just upload the entire screenplay. And then hopefully this will work because I'm just going to go through and I just add a little button here just because that's usually typically where you start off when you're doing analysis is to look at the four through lines. Because what you want to do is break apart the script into the different points of view that the author set up. Not necessarily how you're experiencing it, but the author's point of view as to who's the main character, the I perspective, who is most likely the obstacle character, which would be the you perspective, the relationship, which is we, which is usually between the two of them, and then they, which is the objective story plot. So, and this has reasonable amounts because this has only been out for less than 24 hours. So let's see how things are going. Because I also know there's been lots of issues overnight where this gets really slow and it might throw in some gibberish or it might work perfect. So let's see. It'll probably be a little bit slow, but I anticipate probably by the end of the weekend it'll be all good. So let's see. All right. Perfect. It worked. So below is one way to interpret the screenplay's narrative structure using the subtext universal narrative model, where the four through lines are understood as distinct yet interlocking narrative concerns. So it went through and looked again the very beginning of the analysis of it, and it split out the objective story through line, which is, as I explained, the documents the unfolding tragedy of the Challenger. The objective conflict is the technical and organizational failure, for example, the dangerous O-ring issues and subsequent management cover-up, that sets the disastrous events in motion. It's the broad problem the narrative is trying to resolve, emphasizing facts, the scientific investigation, and the external pressures. That's perfect. And I haven't read this in like 7 years. I think it was 2018. Maybe it was 2019. Um, so I know that that is true. So that's great. And what's happening is kind of like the difference when it was flow, like the last 2 years of Muse, is kind of like off the cuff. Like if you're in the room with somebody and they read it, but they read through it really fast, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the main character is this. Oh yeah, the obstacle character is this sort of thing." And yeah, yeah, I get it, I get it. This is what's wrong with your story. So the thing with if you were to do this like in just straight chat GPT or any other sort of chat thing, um, it'll look like you're getting good coverage. It'll look like you're getting good advice. And I should say you are getting a general look at good advice. So you probably get like 50% of it, and you'll probably be impressed at first, like, wow, this is amazing. But then you'll start to see that it's very general and there's no grounding in it because it's trained on all the subjective ways of looking at story, like hero's journey and save the cat and all that other stuff, which is what most people understand. Then it's wishy-washy. And if you're going off the cuff, that only makes it worse. So what's nice about this, especially the reasoning models, is it goes back and checks its work, goes through. I have a whole bunch of training that I've done into it for the objective point of view of the story structure of the actual script. So it's like the author's point of view. The other ones are great for audience, and for like experiencing it. But if you want to check your work, then you need both. It just so happens this is essentially the only way now that you can go through and objectively do it. And the reason I say objective is the value of the choices it makes are only in relation to the other choices. So it's not someone's opinion that can constantly shift their bias. It only works when the entire thing works. It's a very objectified relationship between it, and it removes the bias of the observer for the most part, as long as they're really good and they know what they're talking about. So that's the really great thing about this is because I'm very, 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 very familiar with this narrative theory, with dramatic theory, which it comes from. I know like how it all fits together and what are the best answers, and so that's what I've trained into Muse. Um, and I just want to make sure in case there are any questions here that pop up. So that's what you're actually getting out of this. So essentially, it's like getting me to read it and tell you all the stuff without me having to do it. And you'll see here it says, as seen in scenes from crisis meetings and press briefings, and it's got this gibberish thing. This is brand new within the last 24 hours. I'm almost fairly certain this will be a way that it will reference the actual text, like quoted text from it. So I'll be able to, hopefully relatively soon, just be able to drop what it referenced. Like, see, you can see here, there's two places in there, maybe like page numbers and stuff. So you can see where it drew from that, which is great because then if there's anything to fix, you can go into it. So even though this is currently kind of ugly, um, and things are kind of getting worked out, then I have a really strong inclination or strong feeling that this will work itself out here pretty fairly quickly. And when it does, it'll be amazing. Okay, so the main character in this text, a character like Roger emerges as the one whose internal and often ethical struggle propels him to expose the truth. And as I recall, it's one of the people that were on the, I don't necessarily, maybe it was NASA, I'll have to see, but he was the one who had seen that there possibly could have been an issue, and then everybody's working against him. So he's got all these ethical, personal issues. It took 73 seconds, not 0.63, and his willingness to confront authority underscore his personal transformation and growing resolve. So it's trying to establish who the main character is, and I'm almost 100% certain that that is correct. And then, make sure it's on do not disturb. Okay. Um, and now the obstacle character. This one is driven by the character or characters, which is smart, who represent the opposing force to the main character's drive. In the screenplay, the obstacle is embodied in the institutional figures, management, and other authorities, such as London Mason, who are inclined to deny, delay, or cover up the safety issues. Their conflict with Roger and his colleagues forms a counterweight to the pursuit of truth. All right, that'll be interesting to dive into. Um, just to see which one is antagonist and which one ends up being obstacle character because they will be different things. But the fact that it said or characters is super encouraging. That would not have happened prior. And then finally, the relationship story through line tracks the evolution of interpersonal dynamics that are almost as significant as the external and internal plots. Sweet. The narrative interweaves personal connections and tensions between, for example, Roger, Bob, and Beth. So I have a feeling Roger and Bob is one relationship, and Roger and Beth are another. And I would almost certainly say that Bob would be the obstacle character. I'll check that in a second. Their interactions, marked by both camaraderie and disagreement, create a secondary dramatic arc. See, I think that could be the relationship story through line and the obstacle character that highlights how relationships shift under the strain of systemic failure and personal responsibility. These evolving relationships offer insight into how the characters support and sometimes undermine one another along the path to confronting the disaster. Okay. In sum, the file PDF can be seen as structured around these four through lines. Okay, and then it just repeats it and does that. So I have this in here that I put in midsummer last year because sometimes I wasn't convinced it was actually referring to these things. I mean, now that you have these, I know that it definitely is. So when you see referenced uploaded document, that's just like a confirmation that it's in there. So let's see if we can figure out right now. What I would do is I would look to see. the let's do the obstacle character first. And I would say, are you sure Mason and Lun are obstacle characters? You mentioned Bob, and I wonder if oops, maybe Bob might be the obstacle character when it comes to ethical practices. Who's the one preaching unethical ways, or who is the opposite? I mean, you could say antithesis, but I don't want to get caught up in a Hegel sort of thing, Hegelian dialectic thing. Um, Actually, who is the one who catalyzes growth in Bob or in Roger? 'Cause that's really what it's about. I really like this live stream better than the Zoom thing. This is wonderful. All right, let's see what it does. Hopefully this goodness will continue. So hopefully it's going back through and rechecking everything and seeing. And I could conceivably say, like, what's the story form for it? And I bet it would go through the entire thing and do it, but I'm just kind of taking it through the process. Oh, that's a really insightful question, Jen. Thank you. In subtext, character roles can be fluid and sometimes intentionally ambiguous. So this is really cool because you're seeing me see this for the first time. The initial analysis placed Mason and Leonard's because they clearly embody the institutional resistance, right? But that could be antagonists. However, there's a strong case to be made for Bob taking on that obstacle role as well. In several scenes, Bob actions and attitudes complicate the picture. So what it's trying to say is, because it is a perspective, right? It's the you perspective that ambiguous. It means it can be handed off to different people and fluid. Like it could be in this person, and then when that person's not available, another person takes over and takes on that role. So oftentimes authors will collapse the obstacle character POV into the antagonist because it's just easy. So, and that's where you get like villains. So, for instance, like the Dark Knight, super easy. He's both obstacle character and antagonist, Joker. So that's when you get a classic villain. More often than not, it's like split, right? Like Casablanca, you have Ilsa as the obstacle character who's willing to do whatever it takes, renegotiate, compromise, all that kind of stuff. Um, Whereas Rick's kind of set in his ways, and the antagonist is what's his name, Strasser, the big Nazi bad guy. But you could see how maybe you could collapse those two into one, where Strasser offers up to other people, hey, maybe you should rethink things, and we should like work out a different plan. You see how that would work? It would make him a much more important character in the narrative. And then and it would make him more villainous. Not that he isn't already kind of archetypal, but much more so. All right. So, however, there's a strong case to be made for Bob taking on that obstacle role as well. In several scenes, Bob's actions complicate the picture. Moral ambiguity. That's probably what his reluctance. I'm going home, so whatever it is, can't wait till tomorrow. It's great. And his casual approach can be seen as embodying the complacency or even the enough. The other thing I've done is um, there's three levels for subtext. There's the basic, there's pro, and then there's infinite. And infinite's supposed to be for you know, if you're working at studios or something like that. Um, I have that cranked up. It grabs much more uh, material information. So, and obviously I have it set for me to be that high. So this is amazing because it's going to grab a bunch of different um, things from it. And his casual approach can be seen as embodying the complacency or even the unethical adherence. See, I would say Bob is definitely, yeah, when Bob unwittingly becomes part of the conversation about technical details and potential dangers, his behavior can force Roger to confront them all. This seems more like a classical obstacle character. It's worth considering that Bob might function partially as both an ally and an op. That's exactly how an obstacle character would work. His professional association with Roger often means he supports the investigation. So this is funny. This is something I'm gonna have to work on training because the obstacle is, it's naturally thinking, oh, it's the bad guy or the person going against him. His reluctance or his pragmatic justifications about maintaining the status quo might obstruct and uncompromised. Yeah. So to answer your question, and it's less, there aren't emojis everywhere and it's less nonsense. While London and Mason are strong candidates for the obstacle roles, as they embody the institutional pressure, Bob's character enters within the team. Yeah. In some readings, Bob's failures or hesitations might indeed be what force Roger to grow. Oh, interesting. In some readings, so like some points of view, by demonstrating what happens when caution crosses into apathy or compliance with unethical practices. Okay. Ultimately, the choice can depend on how you want your narrative to feel. So, for instance, if this was my uh, screenplay already, I have like actual concrete stuff that I can go through and go change. Like, okay, wait, no, I really wanted it to be Mason. Maybe he's supposed to be a big thing. Or no, no, it's definitely Bob. If you prefer a more complex narrative where even those close to the hero challenge him, I mean, that's most narratives. So I don't know if it's more complex. Both interpretations have valid textual support. Which interpretation aligns more? Okay, cool. And then you'll see I just mark it with the little focus logo so you know which one is which. Which interpretation aligns? Well, to me, it definitely sounds like Bob is the main. Oh, sorry, is the obstacle character, and that the other group is the antagonist. So let's set that. So I'm just putting pins. I'm setting markers like, all right, I'm going to say this is it. And then, so let's move on to the relationship story. And I wonder which one is more about the growth of, oh, cool. Somebody put something. Which one's more about the growth of the relationship? Roger Bob or Roger, what was her name? Beth. I think that's his wife. And it could be both. I remember reading a small 2-inch black page article in early 80s, some facts here about Roger. Oh, cool. Oh, nice. Thank you. Cool. So some actual information about Roger himself. All right. I wonder which one is more about the growth of the relation, Roger Bob or Roger Beth. So I'm just trying to see, are they both going to work as relationship story through lines, or is one more than the other? My recollection is it was more just the Roger Bob, but I did do a quick, brief little test yesterday, and it sounded like maybe Roger Beth, but I just want to get another look at it here and see what the answer is. All right. Well, Bob is cast as an obstacle character. The relationship is best served by the arc. Oh, interesting. Wow. So, because I said it as Bob, now it's saying Roger and Beth. Throughout the script, moments between Roger and Beth are marked by genuine emotional connection. For example, here's that pivotal moment where Bob reaches out and takes Roger's hand and he relaxes into comfort and support. That gesture. This quiet intimacy signifies the growth and deepening of their connection amidst chaos. Interesting. While Roger's clash with Bob is rooted in technical and ethical conflicts, his interactions with Beth reveal a transformative side, one that is more personal and healing. So this is something that will always be difficult, at least here in the beginning. Rather soon, this should get really good, but it's doing the he said, she said sort of thing to a certain extent. Um, that it's Roger's growth that is why the relationship exists, which is a very male oriented version of looking at relationships. Their dialogue and shared moments often serve to bolster Roger's resolve and personal growth. Yeah, see, clearly illustrating a relationship. Well, his evolving provides an emotional counterbalance. So even though the dynamic, okay, well, if you were to remove the idea, it's just like talking to a smarter person. If you were to remove the idea that the relationship is about how Roger grows from it, and let's pretend, maybe this will help the author. Um, what bond seems to grow over time? Oh, here's another check. Like, in other words, what's the state? What's the emotional state of Roger and Bob's camaraderie at the beginning of the story compared to the end? And then do the same for the relationship between Roger and Beth. They're married, right? I have a feeling that's it. So I'm just asking a deeper question to see what happens here. All right. Do the same. Then okay. Right. All right. Roger and Bob. Initially, Roger and Bob share an almost brother in arms quality. Okay. At the end, as the narrative unfolds, Bob's role as the obstacle becomes starker. The initial warmth is worn by growing frustration and tension. What once was a shared camaraderie now feels strained. The emotional state shifts towards bitterness and disillusionment. That feels more like a relationship growth, which is my recollection of it. Let's see. Roger and Beth. The dynamic between Roger and Beth, who share marital bonds, starts with a baseline of calm, right? Their exchanges, whether quiet gestures or brief, intimate moments, establish trust and warmth. As the story progresses, Roger and Beth's bond evolves towards a more profound, heartfelt intimacy. Their marital connection deepens into an unsupposed. Well, interesting. So I'm going to leave it. I'm not sure, actually. In summary, both those sound pretty strong. In summary, while Roger's camaraderie with Bob starts as a collegial, we're in this together kind of rapport that becomes increasingly fraught with ethical conflicts, his relationship with Beth deepens into a sanctuary of genuine care and understanding. This contrast not only highlights the personal cost, but also underscores the way different are involved. Hmm. All right. All right. For now, let's hold off on establishing the RS because both of those sound pretty good. How about we get started trying to figure out what the story form is? So the idea is that, all right, now I have established the kind of point of view. Now I'm going to start finding the source of conflict in those points of view. And I'm going to start big and I'm going to get really small. And this will be a bit of a different process in the coming weeks. It'll be much cooler, it'll be much more accurate, and I think everybody will be on board. Let's start sketching out a draft story form. All right. Objective story through line. Its conflict comes from a process of uncovering and trying to fix a systemic failure. So what we're trying to do here currently is look for the domain of conflict. So there's going to be a bit of a shift in that the terminology is going to be all about finding the source of conflict. So domain, this will be most of what next week will be about, which is form, finding the form. So we have the perspective. Now, like, what shape does it look like? It works exactly the same as domain, but the shape of it in um, in the new model is external processing. So I'm looking at all the conflict that's going on in this O-ring issues and management cover up, and it's a problem with how people do things, how they like process information, how they appreciate what's going on, who takes over control, that kind of stuff. So it looked at the entire screenplay and said, like, okay, seems like external processing is where most of it is, which is perfect. So that's good. If you're coming from Dramatica, that would be the OS would be in the physics domain. Main character through line. This centers on Roger's ethical drive, his personal commitment to expose the truth. In our reading, his journey is not simply about technical matters, but about an internal conflict over responsibility and guilt. So it's saying that he's going to be one of the two internal, like it's looking at it, and when it's trying to figure out the form of conflict, the shape of it, it's shaped more in the internal areas, and the form of it is either going to be like his ethical nature. Is it more about, what he believes and all that stuff, or is it the way that he thinks through it? And you might notice too, especially if you're really familiar with how this all works, that the way the Dramatica model is set up and the way that this model is set up is that the main character, um, and the objective through line, so the most subjective through line and the most objective through line can't be of the same framing or processing. So one of them has to frame and the other one has to process. Can't have them both framing. It just don't work. Um, so it's saying it looked through the whole thing and it's one or the other and it can't decide. So this is either a fault of the screenplay itself, which might suggest why it was number 33. Not to say it's bad because it got on blacklist. And then um or it tells you exactly where it's supposed to be, and maybe this is wrong. I'm pretty sure this is right. This seems familiar to me. And I actually think there's a recorded video of us doing this with real people. I'll have to look and see. All right, obstacle character. We now see Bob not as a straightforward ally, but as a character whose ethically ambivalent stance stands in sharp contrast to Roger's uncompromising pursuit of truth. To match Roger's transformation, Bob's role has an obstacle that might be set using a domain from the same family. So because it can't tell the difference between the two, it's also putting Bob here. That's a good signal, like, oh, maybe there's some underlying issues with the entire narrative if you can't tell the difference, like right off the bat, because you don't want how conflict looks from my point of view is not, no, it cannot by definition look like the way that it looks like from somebody else's point of view. So already that's a huge red flag. All right, relationship story. Although we're pausing on fully committing to details here, super cool. Our analysis points to Roger's marital relationship with Beth as the evolving bond. And again, it also put it into internal emotional life. Very interesting. At this stage, we need to make several interlocking choices, which is kind of like what I was explaining. Given our choices above, we should decide whether our technical objective story will be placed in external processing or perhaps external framing. I don't think that's right. Similarly, external framing would be like if you were looking at the culture of NASA, or if, yeah, I don't even, that's definitely not right. Similarly, for Rogers, we need to decide to focus on internal change. So our focus on Roger is an ethical self transforming figure, and Bob is his obstructive foil. Aligning them on an internal dynamic might be the most cohesive choice. So the next step would be then to narrow the field down. So, and in Dramatica, these are called concerns. But now we're narrowing the field of conflict in it's those four areas. We'll next identify the particular concerns. For example, the OS might come under a concern like doing, while the MC might involve a concern like being. Nope, those don't sound right. Later, we'll nail down whether the story, and because these aren't gelling in a more defined screenplay, one that has really clear conflict, these wouldn't be as contradictory. Later, we'll nail down whether the story is driven by a series of actions, if the overall outcome, okay. On the MC side, we will also have to. Well, that's what you're supposed to do. So it's just, it's not during giving all the answers. Okay, so open questions for you as the author. I'm just pretending that I wrote this, which is the same thing as doing an analysis. Do you envision? Okay, it's probably external process. Um, let's do this. Well, the OS has to be external frame. And I do like the idea of Roger um, being a beer, which would be one of those internal frames. But I'm not sure where that puts Bob. So let's put it this way. Looking at the resolve dynamic, which one of them relinquishes their resolve and which one maintains their resolve? So this is a really clear way to say changed or steadfast. You're looking at the end, you're comparing it to the beginning. And it's really what it is. Are you giving up? Are you relinquishing that resolve or do you maintain it? Comparing. You can be back and forth throughout the whole thing, but what is it in the end? I don't remember. Let's see. Roger. As the main character, Roger's on a journey that forces him to let go of his old fixed way of dealing with conflict. His internal struggle, framed within an internal his trend involves relinquishing his rigid resolve in order to embrace a more adaptive, ethically driven approach. In other words, crisis compels him in adapt new ways about responsibility and truth. But what is he giving up? I thought he was ethical. Does he relinquish and become more ethical? In contrast, Bob stands as a foil. His approach is characterized by okay. Bob maintains his pre-existing pragmatic resolve, even if those methods aren't as it's an unwavering stance, serves to heighten the conflict. No. Huh. So how does Roger become more like Bob then? What rigid things is he giving up in the beginning? I mean, and if I was the author, I would know the answer to this question. I'm just doing an analysis. Unyieldingly committed to his own internal, almost idealistic code. Oh, so does he become more pragmatic? Like this means he starts out who refuses to accommodate gray areas. Over time, however, as the crisis unfolds, Roger begins to see that his unbending stance might actually hinder progress. In order to build alliances and move forward in a system deeply entrenched, he's supposed to let go. Oh, okay. Sometimes a dose of pragmatism is necessary, even if it means adopting aspects of the very mindset. Oh, cool. That's great. So becoming more like Bob, Roger's not losing his ethical core, but is embracing him more. Oh, okay. So Bob's not a complete sellout. He sacrifices his earlier inflexible resolve, one that saw things in stark black and white, but recognizing that a certain degree of it can be essential to navigating institutional inertia and getting results. In other words, he learns to channel a measured pragmatism. That's beautiful. Wow. That's great. Okay. So then Roger. Okay. Wow. So Roger is definitely relinquishing. My question then is one of them has to be in external framing to contrast with the others. Internal framing. Do any of them or one of them have some sort of personal conflict that would resonate with that form? Uh, let's just call it domain right now. I haven't quite updated it. So now I'm just looking, since it's thinking both of them are in that internal framing, the mind domain, I'm trying to see which one of them fits in the universe domain and which one of them is external framed. I feel like somebody had a sick wife, maybe, or something. I've read a lot of stuff. Roger's journey is one of internal transformation. Uh, Okay. For Bob, Bob's approach is rooted in a personal confidence defined in the improved extra. That still sounds like mine to me. He clings to conventional metrics. Done summary. I don't. They're both. Those both still sound like internal. Is Bob's wife sick or is feel like I remember that? Or am I making it up? And that would only be because the reason I say that is if one or the other is sick, if I recall, then that would be the gray area of pragmatism. Sometimes you kind of have to like bend the rules a little bit, or sometimes things aren't as perfect as you want them to be, and that's coming from that external frame because of the attachment to the external thing. No, I'm making this up. We can introduce an okay, an external level personal conflict to provide that contrast. One effective approach is to anchor Bob in an external framing conflict by giving him a fixed, unyielding burden. Well, wouldn't want to call her a burden that underscores his reliance on external conditions, but that would be perfect. This is kind of like Ilsa in Casablanca. She's burdened by what's his name, freedom fighter guy, and she's kind of defined by him. Um, and the fact that she's willing to do anything for him, you know, to the point where she'll just stay with Rick even though she's not like really into him, or maybe she is. Um, but she's defined by that, that status. So this would be a way to make Bob's wife, I mean, would be a way to fix that. So I wonder if the script doesn't have anything like this and they're both in there, that would be a reason why it never really went anywhere or why there were some issues with it. Because again, you want to have that contrast because part of the only way you can understand conflict from one perspective is to see it externalized in a different space. I can't know myself from knowing myself. I can only know myself from seeing somebody else dealing with another version of that conflict that I can see myself into it. I can project back and forth, but you can't be in the same area because then it's just like there's nothing, there's no conflict. Bob's wife's chronic unyielding illness creates an unchangeable home environment, a condition that forces him to see the world in stark objective terms. Because she faces a condition that is fixed and beyond simple personal control, Bob becomes even more committed to the established procedures and external norms. He finds comfort in the certainty of objective facts and the immutable nature of his professional burden. In this way, his maintained resolved. It's deeply rooted in external. Yeah, that's beautiful. So that would be a way to fix it. Meanwhile, oh, cool. And then it's going to show the contrast. While his own family dynamic is important for the emotional, he isn't similarly weighed down by external immutable condition at home. I mean, the other way it could be, and I'll check this in a second, but this is a beautiful way to, if we're going to say Rogers in this internal framed sense of conflict, then we need uh, Bob in the external framed because they both have to be along that same axis. Um, that's really awesome. Does that work? Yeah, that would work great. But I wonder, just to double check, there's no personal issues with Roger in regards to like his status, um, job occupation, finances, home leadership roles, that kind of thing. That would be the only thing that would put him in that sort of external frame thing. I don't think so. Yeah. His paint razor comes from. Yeah. Okay. So this might be we've identified an empty spot in the screenplay. It'd be interesting. I'll have to see if I do have that recorded because I used to do that more group analysis of like blacklist screenplays. I'll go see if I can find it and see how that lines up. Um, but this would be a way to fix it. So I'm just going to keep it like that for right now. So for the sake of an example, let's keep the idea that Bob's sick, but he's going to do whatever it takes pragmatically. That will, which will contrast with Roger's strict ethical nature. And then for the RS, let's for now just make it the camaraderie, friendship between Roger and Bob. And let's figure out the pivotal elements. Because once we have that, we probably have enough for an entire story form here. I got started a little bit late, so I'll go a little bit past 3. See if we can get to a story form on this one. So far, it's working great. Of course, as soon as I say that, that's when it will crash horribly. Oh, no! Did I jinx it? Ah, that's funny. Shouldn't be taking this long. Unless it's going through the whole thing. Oh, good. Here's one way to define. Okay, replacing Roger in the internal processing, right? Okay. A strong candidate is control versus abandon. At the start, Roger is marked by a strict, uncompromising ethical code. As the crisis unfolds and he's forced to confront a reality, he's compelled. I mean, that's hard. He's compelled to abandon control to abandon. I mean, hmm, man, maybe it should be free. This was originally free. All right, obstacle character. Bob, whose external personal burden reinforces the reliance on objective, fits well into the external processing. Yep, 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 yep. Oh, that's fine. It's getting confused. Why? Well, let's look at this though. Bob's steadfast trust in the status quo, even in the face of emerging danger, puts him at odds with new evidence. Huh. Yeah, see, it's all over the place. This is usually a sign that there's issues with the actual story. Because there should just be one set of pivotal elements, and one is Bob and one is Roger. Presumption, proven. Is that what it is? It's proven in presumption. Let's see. Acceptance and rejection. No, I mean, you're showing that there are issues with the story for sure, but I wonder, let's try proven presumption, meaning, what's his name? Bob? Bob is proven, and Roger is presumption. And I think the way that I'm thinking of that, so the way that would be different is Bob would be someone who would be like, well, this is how we always do things. And unless proven otherwise, we're going to keep going on. Whereas somebody from the presumption side, the presumptive side, would say, I would never presume any real answer until all facts were shown, kind of like that. So you can see there are two sides of the same coin. One is a proven, it's proven. It's just what we do. We do, and the other guy's like, "Well, no, I would never presume. I would never presume." And then at the end, I haven't really proven it. Or is it the other way around? Uh, okay. Let me just. I mean, I'm guessing. So let's just say, does that sound like a dynamic between Bob and Roger, or do I have it flipped? Because if he was to, hmm, just repeating what I said, as he said, I would never presume. I mean, do you have any examples? Actually, screenplay. That's the real question. Man, I can't figure out what direction that would be because he's a very ethical. It's like going from black and white to okay, here, cool, it's getting good. And several teams refers to established launch protocols and accepted engineering data, implicitly meaning they'll continue on that set path until unless proven otherwise. And I think that's the problem of the story. You haven't proven it, you haven't proven it, and we've already proven that we can launch these things and there's no issue. And so that's kind of the core thing. Because I do believe it's not a success story. I think it's very much a failure. And then so I could see, and in a failure story, the proven element is the one that loses. Uh, I'm sorry, is the one that overwhelms the story, the narrative, and ends up being the cause of the failure. Roger, on the other hand, is never satisfied with presumed conclusions. 73-second figure. Is this after the disaster? Oh, is this after it? This might be after it. Shows his refusal to lean on assumptions. That actually sounds right. I mean, logically, that sounds right. Instead, he wants to know every detail before drawing conclusions. So, in effect, Bob's attitude is, "We've already done it this way, and the results have been proven. There's no need to fix what isn't broken." Roger counters by saying, "I would never presume any real answer until all facts are clearly shown." And he drops that at the end. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? That sounds perfect because the outcome of the story is definitely failure. So let's make the problem proven. And what else do we have to nail down for the story form? And while it's doing that, let me see what that little question was. Okay, good. Oh, was that? Oh, right. Okay. To look at that later. So let's make the problem proven. Oh, did he put this? Oh, it's different knowledge. Okay. I'll look at that later. All right, here's a summary of what we still need to nail down. Core narrative dynamics set the outcome of failure. The story driver. Okay, this is the catalyst that propels the objective story forward. For stories steeped in technical crisis and ethical competition, we have to choose whether the driver is predominantly an action, real-time combustible incident that sets off a sequence of events, or a decision. I would say it's got to be action driven. As I recall, it's the investigation after. Think about whether our story is set up as a cause and effect goal driven dopamine narrative, which it is, or if it's more of a holistic relationship and an equity balancing serotonin narrative. Given our emphasis on technical decisions, ethical dilemmas, and resulting failure, we might lean toward dopamine. Yep. Story judgment. Okay. The judgment here in detail will detail whether Bob's process of relinquishing his rigid ethical culminates in bad judgment. This aspect defines the meta order of events. Do we want a narrative that unfolds a continuously evolving space time framework? Meaning, space is objective and time is, okay, is subjective. Okay, so question. Is this story about the disaster or about the investigation of the disaster afterwards? And then at the end, what is the result of everything? What happens in the end? And um, give me concrete examples from the ending, just so it doesn't pick up on my conversation before and try and say, oh, it's a failure. So it's kind of like this is how I would analyze a script if I haven't even read it yet, trying to get the answers to objectively, not my bias whether or not I liked it, but whether or not these dynamics are actually in it. Okay, it is afterwards. The process where Roger questions the proven standards behind the scenes look, the disaster itself. Oh, is it like before leading up to it and happens and then the investigation? What happens in the end? Okay. In later scenes, I can't wait till I can get actual citations. We witness the technical discussions. For instance, the memo has insistence on the precise fraction as detailed. Okay. Ooh, interesting. In the final film conversations with the engineering leaders, the engineer mindset theory that we've always done it this way. Oh, rad. Proven's like definitely the problem. Ultimately, the shuttle goes off with everything in place for failure, the controlled buildup, a countdown, the pros conferences, and finally the show's explosive disintegration is a concrete cinematic moment. How the disaster exemplifies how the unexamined proven assumptions reflected in Bob's maintained resolve lead inevitably to loss. The narrative is about both the investigation and the disaster. The integrated approach. Okay. And what is Roger's emotional state at the end? Is he left unresolved? That's the question for the bad. So I don't remember if because the it could be driven by decisions. So the idea with the driver is what kicks off the story, and then that's what leads to the interesting. I'm gonna ask him one other thing here. At the end, Roger is left in steeped raw, unresolved emotional turmoil. Okay, it's failure bad. For example, in the screenplay's concluding sequences, we witness Roger meticulously presenting data On the cold-induced O-ring erosion, yet as the conversation with our ups turns dismissive and the disastrous launch unfolds, there's a piercing moment of silence after the shuttle's dramatic failure. A moment when all his unanswered questions, oh, rad. A profound sense of guilt and responsibility. This is his emotional state. A profound sense of guilt and responsibility, an unfulfilled longing for resolution, and lingering internal conflict. That would be a judgment of bad. Okay. Well, those are all indicators indicators of, let me make sure I'm still on here. Yep. Indicators of judgment of bad. So let's do this. Find the major plot points. There should be about five of them. Um, Beginning, midpoint, end, and then two in between those. And for each one, determine the cause and effect significance of them in terms of an action causing decisions, decisions, or decisions causing actions. I'm pretty sure it's the latter. I mean, if I was writing it, that's what I would do. A lack of decisions or ending up to more and more failures, da, 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 and then the end not making a decision or a decision to just go for it is then what leads to the action. But I just wanted to see because I had done this before where I had uploaded a screenplay and then had it look for the drivers, and the new O3 model is like crazy good. All right. Roger gathers initial data that reveals trouble and discrepancies. That's an action. Yeah, an action that forces a decision. Eh, two. Early middle. As more evidence, Roger confronts management, insisting on rechecking established protocols. This confrontation forces internal debates and triggers a formal push for more rigorous testing. That's decision to action. That's good. This one's decision. Oh, this is cyclic. Ooh, interesting. In a critical confrontation, the growing divide between Roger and Rob. Bob comes to the forefront. Rob defends the proven approaches, while Roger rejects presumption until full evidence is in hand. Okay. There's likely a really cool way to actually find the precise ones. The fateful test. A comprehensive technical test is implemented intended to prove the safety of the system. This is funny. This is great. Action to decision. Either, oh, forces both management and Roger to confront a harsh decision. Either delay the launch. Oh, I still feel like the emphasis is on decision. Yeah. Here, the ultimate decision to launch despite overwhelming signs of failure directly triggers the final destructive action. Oh, this is so cool. Then you get a summary. I mean, if it's your own story, you know what those pop ups are, so you could like point them out. No, this is the midpoint. This is this. Is it? Because to me, this is actually a dynamic that's one of my blind spots. Um, so I'm going to go with decision. Let's go with decision. I think that's it. Can you verify this story form for me? And that's a way just for it to check all the different things that it's supposed to go through. Well, this will be interesting because the other thing that I'm still waiting on is for the focus to be really good at calling, all the things that it can do. Flow is great and it works. When O3 came out, it's not very good at calling these different functions. Sometimes it does it. That's a good sign that it popped up again like that. So then when it's doing this is when it's actually using all the training that I've done. And this is available both in Flow and Focus. So if you are in Flow at any subscription and you say, can you verify the story form for me? It kicks off into Focus mode. All right. Oh, haven't been fully integrated. Currently, we have decision, failure, bad, space, time, pivotal elements, presumption. That's right. Dopamine, internal processing. Oh, this should be everything. What's missing or undefined are narrative aspects such as the specific narrative concerns. Oh, actually, I feel like that's enough. What's missing? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Because we haven't integrated it. Actually, I think that's enough. I mean, the capable family. So, progress above, doing for the OS, doing for the RS, and just see, is that all of it? And I mean, this will be really, this is kind of the reason why switching it over to form, field, facet, and force to really narrow in like, yeah, there are these other things and they're cool from a writerly standpoint, but really we're just doing one thing. And once we have the form of it, and actually once you know where the force of it is coming from, everything else will fall into place. So that should be enough. Uh, oh, does it say external framing? Ah, there, that's why. Oh, it thinks that it's still external framing. That's a mistake. Huh, this reallocation is arbitrary, reflects a deliberate inversion of the conventional assignments. However, it also requires us to reconsider. If we assign Bob the progress concern, that means his domain would be external framing, which is actually right. Similarly, assigning the OS the doing concern and replacing the objective showing external processing. That's true too. So it either forgot earlier that that's what it was, or I didn't nail that down ahead of time. For the relationship story, giving it the being concern implies its core is about a continuously unfolding dynamic state of impersonal identity, which is like just be, it's better to be seen and not heard. So the question really becomes, do these revised assignments resonate with your vision? Yeah. In other words, do you prefer the mapping you suggested where Bob's fixed, externally validated nature is captured as progress? The OS's process is about tangible action, the RS's evolving connections about being, and Roger's internal subtle transformative spark is at a deeper, almost pre-reflective level. That's funny. Pre-reflective. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is. Um, revised assignments. Let's go with those and finalize. Oops. Finalize the story form and save it as a story here. So it should probably check it one last time and then let's see what it does. Oh, did I lose it? Oh, this request violates our content moderation. I believe that's a mistake with the API. Dang it. Let's see. That's not me. I didn't say bad words there. All right, let's try. Let's make that happy. Let's go to all conversations. Luckily, if it's a moderation thing, it should still work. Come on. But I mean that's pretty amazing for just an hour's worth of work. All right. Okay, cool. It didn't even go through. So let's try it again. Let me know if you'd like to adjust the domains. No, those are oh no, let's do the revised assignments where Bob is in external framing and the OS is in external processing. And then go ahead and finalize the story form and save it. for me. Is it all down now? I got everything but yeah. Did it just die? Let's check here. Yep. Oh no. I mean, it says it works, but they've been having errors all day. That is not a common thing because I can tell you that means this isn't even going through, and there's no bad words there. So it's likely this has been updated, which means I can't give here. So um, I will keep it like this for now. The great thing is this has not destroyed this whole conversation here. I'll be able to pick this up next week because I'm going to do these every week. This is great. This is super fun for me. Um, and hopefully you learn a thing or two how to use subtext. I might change the date next week. It might be on Tuesday instead. But let me know what you thought of this if you can. Um, and I'll see. Hopefully I can say I can put it up. But I'm a huge fan of my face looks very red. Um, of all this. An hour 11. I got one thumbs up. Cool. All right, cool. So I'm gonna stop sharing and then I will say goodbye and hopefully they'll get this fixed and then everything will work over the weekend. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you next time. Okay, your stream will stop immediately and you'll no longer be live. Yes. Thanks.